I recently read a book by Samuel Heilman called Who Will Lead? It's about Hasidic dynastic power struggles. And these power struggles over who will lead the Hasidic sect, none of them are over religion. Like, none of them are over theology. I don't recall any of them even being over ritual practice, spirituality. These things have nothing to do, really, with who will lead a Hasidic dynasty. So what it comes down to is, do you have the support of the most powerful people in the Hasidic dynasty? That's what it comes down to. That determines who will lead. Do you have popular support? Do you have elite support? Do you have money support? Do you have institutional support within the dynasty? And then it helps if you can tie back your bloodline to the Holy See, to some prestigious source. So I'm just thinking off the top of my head that Jewish life and Hasidic life very similar to the alt-right, in that someone could come along on YouTube, could just start doing alt-right streams, could develop a following, and let's say this guy gets 5,000 live viewers on average every time he streams, and day in, day out he's talking about alt-right themes, and all the leaders of the alt-right are willing to come on his streams, and let's say he's able to monetize what he's doing, and he even develops a staff, a paid staff, some kind of organization. I mean, this guy who we've never heard of yet could come along out of nowhere, and he could become the leader of the alt-right. All he would need is reach, influence, the respect of his peers, the intellectuals in the movement, and money and some kind of financially stable framework for persisting. And this bloke, out of nowhere, become the leader of the alt-right. And so too in Jewish life, there's no pope, there's no hierarchy, all right? No one decides who's going to be the leader of the Jews. Be the change you seek in the world, Mr. Ford. Okay, so I could start my own synagogue. Here I am, a convert to Orthodox Judaism, not the most religious Orthodox Jew you'll ever meet, and I absolutely could start my own synagogue. And if I had financial backing and I made good decisions, I could very well create a very successful synagogue. Me, Luke Ford. It would simply come down to merit. Do I put together a compelling package so that people start transferring, first of all, their feet? They come, use their feet to come to my shul. They enjoy it. They tell others about it. Other people come. Then people start financially supporting the institution. And so people are going to be asking me halakhic questions, okay? Obviously, I'm not a trained rabbi. I'm not a maven on halakha, Jewish law. But if I build up a successful synagogue, I would have growing influence. Me, a convert to Orthodox Judaism with a scandalous past, a very, flawed present, a bloke who goes to all these different 12-step programs, and I could make an imprint on Orthodox Judaism in Los Angeles, or just Jews in LA, if I put together a dynamic, growing, powerful synagogue. Now, there's no way in hell I would ever do this. Okay, I want to be clear. A man has got to know his limitations. So, I'm never going to go out and start a synagogue. Ever, 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 ever. I'm never going to have any pretense of religious leadership or political leadership. Okay, a man's got to know his limitations. But, just pointing out, it's theoretically possible. Someone like me could come along, a convert to Judaism, and start a successful synagogue that could outcompete synagogues that have been around for 100 years. That could outcompete synagogues with professional staffs, professional rabbis. If you simply put together a more compelling package, you could do that. And theoretically, I could team up with rabbis, and I could produce books on what it means to be Jewish in the 21st century, and the holiness of the Sabbath, and the meaning of Rosh Hashanah, and 27 ways to get more out of Yom Kippur. And if they're good books, they would produce a revenue stream. I would get speaking invitations, and my influence and fame and power would grow. So Judaism has pretty much always been meritocratic that way. It's not hierarchical, like the Seventh-day Adventist Church is hierarchical. There's a general conference set in Washington, D.C. There's a general conference president, and there's a bureaucracy and an administrator of the church, and it's top down. There's an individual and individuals and groups who decide what is and isn't kosher in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and decides the church's approach to new issues, and that's how it goes. So when my father ran afoul of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, he was recalled to the Seventh-day Adventist Church's General Conference headquarters in Washington, D.C. He was given 9 months to prepare a defense of his views. Then he was put on trial in front of the church's leading scholars and administrators, all gathered together in Glacier View, Colorado, outside of Denver. And even though the scholars, by and large, either agreed with my father or were sympathetic to my father, the church's administrator was a very canny political player, and so he got everything he wanted. He got my father drummed out of the church's ministry, Neil Wilson, whose son is running the Seventh-day Adventist Church currently. So his father, Neil Wilson, drummed my father out of the church. My parents and I left the church. My dad started his own thing. And my dad started his own non-denominational evangelical Christian foundation, and hundreds of other Seventh-day Adventist clergy followed my father's path out of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. So in Jewish life, it's usually been highly charismatic rabbis who've wielded the most influence. And why is it important to be charismatic? Because the more charismatic you are, the more followers you have. The more followers you have, the more money you have, and the more power and the more influence you have. So when there's a struggle for dynastic succession in a Hasidic sect, okay, the rabbi who can assemble the most monetary and elite and popular support, he's going to win out in that dynastic struggle. And it's not going to be over theology or spirituality or religion that will determine who will lead. So I'm just thinking about parallels between, say, the Altright and Orthodox Judaism. So in both, there's no hierarchy. Okay, no one determines who's going to lead the alt-right. The media has anointed Richard Spencer, but he's gone from failure to humiliation to failure to humiliation over the past 2 years, almost 2 years since Trump's election. So just thinking, like taking the Hasidic model and applying it to the alt-right, well, one of the things that I've noticed in Jewish life, particularly Orthodox Jewish life, is the compelling power of the powerful personality, the charismatic rabbi. And in my experience, every charismatic rabbi that I've wanted to follow, that I've wanted to get close to, I usually found out they were running some kind of con, some kind of scam. And like telling the truth doesn't always endear you to people. So if you can convince them of a compelling non-truth, that can create great popularity. For example, in Jewish life, if you talk about the horrors of the Holocaust and the dangers of another Holocaust, and how the non-Jews hate the Jews, and how the Jewish state is imperiled, and how Jews are imperiled, and Jews are under threat, and the Cossacks are coming, and we need a museum of tolerance, we need more Holocaust education. And, like, if you can be that kind of activist, there are hundreds and hundreds of well-paying jobs for you. So you're peddling something that is just varying degrees of toxic, that is bad for the people who follow you. It's bad for the wider society, but you get money, power, and access to beautiful women. So too in politics. Someone could come along and say, look, the main problems for white people are the Jews, okay? And they're going to get a lot of support, because almost everybody would rather blame their problems on an outside source. So Jews like to blame their problems on non-Jews. Alt-right likes to blame his problems on Jews. Muslims like to blame their problems on Jews. It's been a while since I've been a Christian, so I don't remember which outside group Christians are most fond of blaming. But blacks certainly like to blame white people for their problems. It seems like minorities in America, in political terms, have teamed up with the coalition of the fringe to blame the white Christian majority for their problems. And so that is a mixture that will bring you followers and money, even though what you're teaching is toxic. So there are leading figures on the dissident right who strike me as the opposite of toxic. And these are people who eschew drama. So I don't recall Jared Taylor having a lot of dramatic falling out with people. Don't recall that ever happening. Don't recall that ever happening to Kevin McDonald or to Peter Brimlow. So these would strike me pretty much pretty healthy people. I remember Dennis Prager saying that he's never lost a friend. And that's usually a pretty good indicator you're a solid person, because friendships are not always easy to build. They're frequently easy to destroy and hard to recover, and an ability to sustain friendships is usually an excellent sign of someone's stability. So large swaths of the alt-right are always feuding with each other and devoting far more attention to fighting with each other than to fighting the enemy. this is a sign of an unstable personality. Okay, if you have lieutenants who are always leaving you, as appears to be the case with Richard Spencer, I'm just saying appears, I don't know the full story, then that's not a good sign. Okay, if you're not able to maintain partnerships, relationships, people are dropping out of Altright.com, not a good sign, but I don't know the full story. It's certainly not definitive. But by and large, healthy people don't blow up friendships gratuitously. And I see that in Orthodox Jewish life, that the congregational rabbis, generally speaking, treat people with care. And let's say you just start going to a Torah class on Monday nights. If you stop going, the rabbi will often call you, hey, what's going on? Right? And if you stop going and start going to another person's Torah class on Monday night, that will feel like a slap in the face to your original rabbi and your original synagogue and your original group. So human connection is fragile, it is holy, it is probably the best sign of someone's mental health. And I know this in Jewish communal life, that human connection thing comes first. You don't walk into a synagogue the first time and they hit you up for money. Okay, the whole point is that you build relationships within the synagogue, and then because of those relationships, then you're going to want to carry your weight financially, and you may even want to assume a leadership role, and so you give more and more money. But the human relationships come first. And so you see people like Jared Taylor seems pretty good at sustaining relationships over many years. Same with Peter Brimlow, Kevin McDonald. I'm going to assume F. Roger Devlin is like that. I don't really know. But these are the signs of people who can lead. If you choose a leader who burns through friends, burns through his supporters, burns through his lieutenants, burns through his alliances, that person is usually going to be toxic for you. Now, just because someone tends to maintain friendships and is good at personal connection doesn't mean that he's not peddling a con. Okay, this just means he's psychologically stable. So people can get on a good earner. For example, there's no business like Shoah business. It's like educating people about the Holocaust is a great business. Doesn't make the world a better place. In many ways, it can make the world a worse place, but it's a great business. And so too, people in black life who rile up hysteria about Whitey. They're not doing blacks any favors. And people on the alt-right who say Jews are our biggest problem, they're not fit for leadership. Because for every group, their own group is the biggest problem. It's amazingly tempting to go, they're the problem. The outsiders is the problem. But in my mind, true leader is someone who tells you the truth, rather than that which is convenient for him, that which collects money and power for him. And a truth teller will tell a group, tell an individual usually. Biggest problem is with yourself. Biggest problem is things that you're doing, ways that you are thinking, unthought through reactions that you have to life. That's what's causing your biggest problem. So in my mind, that's the person who I see as a good leader. Bye-bye.